Westfield Memorial Hospital provides high-quality health care to residents of Western New York, offering patients the most sophisticated medical advancements while keeping the ease and familiarity of a community hospital. Support for Chautauqua Sunrise has been provided by WRFA 107.9 FM, Jamestown's public radio station, streaming online 24/7 at WRFALP.com. Low power to the people. Chautauqua Sunrise is made possible by a grant from Fredonia Place, a continuing care retirement community providing dignity in a modern luxury environment. Meter's Restaurant, a family tradition for over 50 years in downtown Ripley, is a proud supporter of Chautauqua Sunrise. Meter's provides all-day dining, banquet services, and custom catering, specializing in pie. Funding for Chautauqua Sunrise is provided in part by the Chautauqua County Industrial Development Agency, with offices in Jamestown, Dunkirk, and Westfield, helping businesses to prosper throughout Chautauqua County. From supporting people with disabilities to enjoy great lives, to providing health care services that are available to anyone, the Resource Center has been improving our county for more than 60 years. Learn more about how the Resource Center makes a positive difference in people's lives. From the Access Chautauqua Studios in Mayville, it's Chautauqua Sunrise. Chautauqua Sunrise is hosted by Doc Hamels and supported by the award-winning volunteers at Access Chautauqua. We are here to share local news, colorful interviews, and events of interest to everyone. Chautauqua Sunrise is broadcast live Saturday mornings each week from 9 to 10 a.m. Send events via email or call us live. Check us out on YouTube and Facebook. And now, from the Access Chautauqua Studios, it's Chautauqua Sunrise.
We're here. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Chautauqua Sunrise. I had to wait till I saw myself on screen here before I started talking. Well, I hope you're having a great morning. Good afternoon to everybody around the world. We are streaming live through... What'd you say? Oh, all right. I have some friends here with me today we'll get to in a little bit. Every once in a while, they like to butt in when I'm talking. We're streaming live around the world, and we're on Spectrum 1301. And so... Good morning to all of you, and good afternoon, especially to the folks that are listening on WRFA 107.9, low power to the people. What do you say about that? Okay. On Tuesdays at 1 o'clock, I want to remind you, too, that we are live right now, 90 whatever it is, 9:05 in Saturday mornings. And if you would like to give us a call, have a question for my guest or myself, or a comment, something to do with anybody's birthday or anniversary, organization, you might have an event that's virtual. A lot of people are doing virtual events these days, or just, want to say hi. It's okay. Give us a call at 753-5225. Okay, speaking of announcements, I got this from my press room, that this week, on Inauguration Day, Mike from Portland is going to have a birthday. So, Mike, I don't know if you all can hear these guys. They're purring and barking at me and making noises. Mike, have a great birthday. Mike calls in for quite often. Okay, we got that. Also want to do a shout out to Jim Cunningham. He watches the show every week, I think, just about. So Jim, fellow musician and Ripleyan, good morning. Glad you can make it. Okay, you might be wondering what is going on here. Last week, Dr. Marianne Spanos, the director of the Office for the Aging Services in Chautauqua County, was telling me about these robotic animals. And I said, whoa, I'd love to see what they're all about. And So she was telling me that they have cats and dogs for folks that maybe are at home and they're kind of isolated, and that these are sort of like, they're, what would you call it? They help you calm down and relax, companion animals. And so we've got a cat here today, and this cat is purrs, likes that, and maybe it will roll over for us. It was rolling over earlier in the beginning. And this little fella, he wags his tail and he barks, and during the opening credits there, during the music, they were both chirping along here, so must be they like music. Anyways, out of the clear blue, they start talking and doing things here. Not talking. They're not talking. Making their sounds. I don't want to think I'm crazy here. Anyways, any more than I usually am. And the cat comes with a little brush, and I could imagine that if somebody was lonely, this could be a lot of fun. Uh-oh, they're okay. So Marianne Spanos in the office, thanks for loaning these guys to us today. Aren't you going to say anything about this? All of a sudden, he just starts barking at me when I'm talking here. But if you pet them, they kind of like that sort of thing. Are you quiet right now? I wasn't talking to you. Oh, thank you. There. I can imagine this to be a lot of fun, or even for young children. Now we have a chorus going. Okay. Anyways, if you're interested in these robotic animals, the Office for the Aging has a program, and you can check it out with Marianne. There you go. Now I can't get you to be quiet. Okay. Buffalo Bills are doing well. They're going to be playing tonight. No comment from the peanut gallery, I see. Oh my God, they're laughing out in the engineering room. Anyways, tonight it should be a lot of fun. It's been pretty sad situation we find ourselves with this pandemic and everything else. And so the sports have been a little bit of a distraction. So hopefully everybody will be happy. We'll be happy with the results tonight, and Bills can keep on going. But anyways, it's just a nice distraction. So go Bills. All right, I have some announcements to make. Would you let me make the announcements? Thank you. All right, let me get my glasses on here. This is a long announcement from the Chamber of Commerce, but I want to read some of it, and it has to do with the pandemic and vaccines and so forth. I believe that they've been in touch with the health department on these things, and they want to talk to us a little bit about the way they see things. Okay. Are we good? All right. It says here, while there are many myths about COVID-19 vaccine, you can rest assured that the vaccine has been just as rigorously reviewed and tested as every other vaccine. Here's some information that has been sourced from the Centers for Disease Control, the Mayo Clinic, and the National Institute of Allergy and Disease. Now, this is coming from the folks at the Chautauqua Chamber of Commerce. All right, first myth. The COVID-19 is not safe because it was rapidly developed and tested. The reality is scientists have been studying coronaviruses for over 50 years. Remember, these types of viruses, they just have different names. And the reason why it's called 19 is because it was in 2019. So there must have been 18 before it. There are hundreds of coronaviruses according to the National Institute of Allergy and Infection Diseases. Some cause the common cold and some spark severe acute respiratory syndrome called SARS. We've heard about that. And the Middle East respiratory syndrome called MERS. In addition, advancements in medical technology such as genomic sequencing have enabled researchers to move quickly to understand the viral sequence of diseases such as COVID-19. Pfizer BioNTech was tested on a population of 43,000 participants. There were no serious safety concerns observed, and the test demonstrated vaccine had reduced the risk of acquiring COVID by 95%. All right, so I have a series of these myths and statements, so here we go. Another myth, the COVID-19 vaccine will make me sick with COVID-19. The reality is the vaccines authorized and recommended in the United States do not contain live virus that causes COVID-19, meaning with you, the vaccine cannot make you sick. It's written weird. In other words, you can't get sick from it. Okay, another myth. I don't need to get vaccinated because I already had COVID-19. Reality is you still need to get the vaccine even if you have had the COVID. That's what it says. Another myth. COVID-19 will alter my DNA. I hadn't heard that one. Reality is the COVID-19 vaccines do not change or interact with your DNA. Another myth, there are severe side effects of the COVID-19 vaccines. Reality, in some people, there are short-term, mild or moderate reactions, such as injection site pain, headache, chills, fatigue, muscle pain, or fever. These symptoms may last for 1 to 2 days. Okay, so I've already talked to some folks that have had the shot. They have a little pain in the arm, just like you would getting some other shot. Or you might get kind of a little funky feeling for a day or two. But that's just the vaccine doing its job. Next, I need to wear a mask after I get vaccinated for COVID-19. Oh, it says I don't need to wear a mask. First of all, it says here, it will take a while for everyone to get vaccinated, and it is unknown at this time whether a vaccinated person can or cannot carry and transmit the virus to others. Wear the masks until further notice. Another myth, COVID-19 vaccines were developed using fetal tissue. Reality, there are no fetal cells contained in or used in the production of the Pfizer BioNTech nor the Moderna vaccines. Another myth, I'm allergic to eggs, so I shouldn't get the COVID-19 vaccine. I've seen that quite often in a lot of vaccines. They ask you that question. Reality, there are no eggs in the development of the production of the Pfizer BioNTech or the Moderna vaccines. I didn't know there were so many myths. Another myth, the vaccine is an attempt to put a microchip or transducer in my body. I've heard that one over and over again. And then it says, seriously, folks, there is no truth to this whatsoever. Gotta love it. Another myth, there are preservatives in the COVID-19 vaccine. Reality, there are no preservatives in the vaccines. Okay, and basically from the chamber, stay safe, be patient, and follow the science. My understanding is if you're interested in the vaccine, go to the county website for the health department, and then it takes you to the New York State website and so forth. You fill out a grid and information. It tells you if you're eligible, and supposedly they're supposed to contact you when the time comes, or you can check out various locations. I believe in Rite Aid in Mayville is one. There's one in Silver Creek. I think there's one in Jamestown. But it's really hard to get through these. You just can't walk in. You have to have an appointment for all these things. And as more and more of this information becomes available, we'll let you know. Okay, the Chamber also wants you to know that there's a new PPP and other business assistance. The Chamber of Commerce is pleased to present the first in a new series of Tuesday Talk programs for 2021 with a special presentation on the new COVID relief package and how it can help local businesses. This has been very helpful to some businesses I know. Our special guest will be Courtney Curatolo, PhD, Director of the Small Business Development Center at JCC. He will discuss additional funding through the Paycheck Protection Program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance Grant program and a whole lot more. The event will be held Tuesday, 8:30, January 19th. And if you're interested, you got to register online through the chautauquachamber.org. So they've got services that are out there to help all of us and good suggestions. All right, moving along, let's go to slide 15, Jeff. Active parenting, ages 5 through 12. We've been talking about this a little bit, and it's coming up this week. Join us for our upcoming active parenting classes, ages 5 through 12. There's 2 virtual 2-hour sessions via Zoom video communications, and they're going to be held January 20 and 27. Time 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. And it's going to be on Zoom, as they said. And if you're not familiar with Zoom, you download the app on any of your hardware, iPhone, your iPad, your computer, your laptop, whatever. And then once you register, they send you an email, and then you just click on it, and magically you'll get on. What's it going to cover? Active parenting will give you the skills to achieve a fuller, more satisfying family life and help your children achieve greater happiness and success. This workshop will show you effective ways to, now again, this is ages 5 through 12, Open up lines of communication. Teach responsibility, courage, and other important character traits. Encourage school success in 7 steps. Prevent future problems with drugs and alcohol and sex. Use nonviolent discipline that really works. Diffuse power struggles with your children. Stimulate independence as your child grows older. For more information, give them a call at 780-2721 or 664-3608 and ask for Kathleen Colby. All right, and a couple more. Let's go to the Reglan A. Okay, this popped up the other day, and I thought this was cool. Everybody's kind of stuck at home and so forth, but they're doing some cool things. Excuse me, this nagging cough. Streaming movies. Streaming through January 31. The Reglan A offers 2 documentaries this month to enjoy. The Mass MoCA is the largest museum for contemporary art in the world. But just 3 decades ago, its vast brick buildings were abandoned and the relics of a shuttered factory are still there. The documentary tells how such a wildly improbable transformation came to be. And then they have Nazrin, Nasrin, was secretly filmed in Iran by women and men who risked arrest to make this documentary. It is an immersive portrait of the world's most honored human rights activist and political prisoner, attorney Nazrin, pardon my mispronunciation, Sotuda, and of Iran's remarkably resilient women's rights movement. This documentary is narrated by Academy Award winner Olivia Colman. For more information, give them a call 664-2465, or you can go for information at reglana.com. Again, 664-2465, or go information at reglana, all one word, .com. Okay, now people are asking, you can open up again? Well, once we open, Reglan Center for the Arts will begin screening movies with a maximum of 50 patrons. Mask requirements, temperature checks, contactless tickets, and concession transactions and social distancing markers will be all in place when the Reg reopens. They're making plans. The theater seating has been reconfigured to accommodate a smaller capacity audience in socially distant sections. All surfaces in the theater, lobby, concessions, box office, and restrooms will be cleaned thoroughly between events. New compliant air filters have been installed. They look forward to serving you soon. So those movies are streaming, and you got to contact them how to get it, but generally you get that over your phone or your iPad and so forth. Okay, so Reg is trying to keep things moving, and they're opening hopefully soon. Okay, next one, Pax Tools. Pax Tools is a collection of evidence-based, trauma-informed strategies to improve cooperation and self-regulation with youth. Pax Tools draws on decades of science to create strategies that support parents, youth workers, and other caring adults to create a nurturing environment that ultimately helps kids thrive. Simple strategies for teaching kids behavior are going to be covered. Pre-registration, of course, is required. And these are going, you have some options. They have January 26th and 28th from 2 to 3:30, February 8th and 10th from 10 to 11:30, and February 19th and 26th, 12 to 1:30. Again, contact prevention works. Give them a call, 664-3608. Okay, so those are the announcements for today. We're going to be right back. Stay tuned.
Doesn't see race. Love is love.
And then, who are we to say how it should look and where it should be and so forth? We're all in pursuit of that. Okay, My little furry friends have gone off camera now. I'm amazed that I got through the announcements without totally laughing. But they were quite realistic, and I can imagine for somebody that needs a companion, that would be really cool. And again, you can contact the Office for the Aging, and they'll hook you up with these. Okay, I want to welcome back to the show someone that's been here from time to time over the years, and Michelle Henry, who is the Chautauqua County historian.
Hello.
Hello, good
Thanks
morning.
for having me.
Absolutely. We were talking about during the pandemic that people all of a sudden have been like stuck at home and thinking about stuff. And they're exercising and they're doing genealogy, I guess.
Apparently,
and cooking.
Yes. A lot of folks, because they weren't working, apparently decided they were going to pursue their ancestry, which is wonderful. And I think that's a great thing. But so we had a very busy time during shutdown where we were getting a lot of letters and phone calls and email from folks who wanted to, were seeking records from us at the county archives. And typically in the summer we have a lot of people who come in to see us in the courthouse, but we couldn't do that this year. So we were doing a lot of communication through other formats. So.
Well, and people know I'm the town historian now in Ripley. Just started my second year. And I kind of know what I'm fielding as far as questions. What kind of questions are they asking? What are they looking for?
Well, usually people are looking for evidence to prove that their ancestors were here, that they married whomever they married, that they were born or died here. So they're usually looking for vital records, which we don't have at the courthouse, but we have a lot of other things that can sometimes help, because New York State was relatively late in requiring anyone to collect vital records, and so a lot of folks are looking for records or information from the early 1800s, and there are no official vital records. We have some newspaper indexes. We do have probate records, at the courthouse and surrogate court. Mm-hmm. There sometimes are court records that can be useful. Sometimes even land records. When people were conveying land between family members, we can help prove connections. So we try to do whatever we can to help folks. We don't actually do their genealogy for them, but we let them know what records we have, and then they tell us where they would like us to look. Another thing that's been very popular recently is getting dual citizenship. And so we've had a lot of folks, particularly with Italian heritage, who can get dual citizenship to Italy if they're, it depends on at what point in their lives their ancestors got naturalized. And so there's
tell me more. I'm half Sicilian.
Okay. So if your ancestors came from Sicily, and they say if it was your grandparents, mm-hmm. if their child, who is your parent,
right.
was born prior to them getting their American citizenship, then you are eligible for dual citizenship with Italy.
So first generation kids had to be born here before my grandparents were naturalized.
Right, and that carries on down. So then even if it was your great-grandparents or your great-great-grandparents. So, and there might even be other loopholes, but that seems to be the one that folks talk about the most, is that they're seeking a copy of their ancestors' naturalization records. And it's quite a legal process, but we have all of the naturalization records for the county from 1814 to 1972. So if anybody got naturalized here, we would be able to provide them with a copy.
Why is there this big deal with the dual citizenship? I mean, is it for buying land and going to the Riviera, or what?
Well, no, I think there could be a number of reasons. I understand that traveling throughout Europe is easier with a European passport.
Shorter line sometimes at the airport.
So right. So once you're in Europe, you can travel easier. Mm-hmm. And then also I understand that if you are in Italy, you get free health insurance. So if you're visiting Italy or you choose to live there part of the year, you can get health insurance if you have Italian citizenship.
Wow.
So
I have a pretty good feeling that my grandparents would have been naturalized. I don't know. Because my grandmother was 1 year old when they came here. So I don't even know how that would work. It would have to have been her parents that would have been naturalized for her to be a citizen, I guess. I don't know. That was like 1901 or something like that.
Right. And I
Wow.
think sometimes, too, if you came as a child, if your parents naturalized before you turned 16, your citizenship was automatic. You didn't have to file your own papers.
Right, that's probably what happened.
So there's a lot of variables, but apparently there's enough people who are interested in it that it's become very popular.
Wow.
So yeah,
Half of Jamestown's watching and listening right now. You're going to get a lot of business.
yeah, which is just fine. And I feel like that we're holding this huge collection of historical records. We want people to use them. I mean, why else keep them? Why do all the work we've done to make them available, to digitize them or microfilm them?
Right.
I want people to use them. That's why we're holding them.
Now, is that your primary job as county historian? You have two hats, don't you?
Right, yeah. I'm really the records manager for the county. So that's the title that keeps me there and pays my salary and allows me to work with the records. So we handle all of the county's records, not just the historical ones. We maintain the central repository for every department to send their records. So we do a lot of daily hands-on pulling of files, digitizing records for departments. But then we also handle all of the historical records.
Wow.
So as a historian, I think it's a nice fit because I have access to the records. I'm there to help people who are coming to do historical research. Not a lot of counties have that. So I think it works out well for the county.
So right now with the COVID situation, I'm guessing people cannot come in?
Right. Right now, the office is not open. We do everything we can to get people access. So we are happy to help. I don't know when it will open. I mean, that's a decision that will have to be made when they feel that it's okay for traffic to start up again.
Yeah.
So.
Huh. Interesting. So, but meanwhile, people can access it online?
Well, we're always putting more and more information up on my website, but with the bulk of the historical records are not digitized yet. But you can call me, email me, write to me, and we're willing to do whatever we can to look for what we have.
I'm still, like this historian in training here. There's a whole network, right, of village and town and city historians?
Right. Every municipality is required in New York State to have a historian. I think we're the only state in the union that requires it. So every town should have one, and the duties are pretty well outlined by the state. You're supposed to research and write and promote local history. So in the past, we would meet a couple times a year to just kind of talk about what we're doing and try to see if there's any projects that we could work on together. Coordinated the county bicentennial together. So yeah, there's a lot of other folks you can ask questions to if you have questions about the job or any particular group of records you might run across. I really would love to see our town historians and village historians try to help their town offices manage their historical records, because a lot of time the town clerks don't have the time or the resources. And that would be a great way for the historians to get involved.
I know that Becky Carvella and I have discussed a number of records that I find and in my office. And I think, gosh, why do I have this? Maybe she could use it. And I actually found a whole cemetery file and book of the East Ripley Cemetery, and she didn't have it, and that really was helpful. So I think, excuse me, a lot of times we have records in one office and they don't know it, and gosh, if we share that information, it would make life a whole lot easier. Yeah, so I could see where the town historian really could be helpful to the town clerk at times. And so every village then has a historian.
Yes, every municipality. So town, village, actually that includes fire districts, schools. Well, schools aren't really a district, but yeah, so they're really, is a great network that New York State, and it really, it came about after World War I, when the state realized that we really need to document the state's involvement in that war. And so the historian's law was passed right after World War I.
No, I'm guessing, just from my own situation, that most historians in these villages and towns, they're like part-time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know how small you can get. I mean, I work like 2 hours a week type thing.
Right, yeah. Unfortunately, many of them don't get paid or get paid, you know, a
Pretty
pittance.
minimal.
Yeah. So you have to do it because you love the job and the subject.
You know, and I'm sure you do the same, and anybody that's listening that likes history, Jeff was talking that he liked history earlier, is like you start on one sentence of some story, and you start to research it, and 3 days later you've missed meals. you haven't talked to people in days because you just get totally absorbed. You find that to be true?
Yes, and you know, that's the thing working with our records. If we're, you know, going through a certain collection of records, you always get pulled off onto tangents. You find something that you have to set aside to pursue, you know. So yeah, but we've stumbled across some great stories because of that. So it's not a bad thing.
Yeah. You know, and I never dreamt that I would grow up to be the town historian, but what I find now is I'm talking to people, and all of a sudden they'll say something, and I said, "Did you know?" And, you know, and it's sort of like all of a sudden now I'm like this encyclopedia that's talking, and they're looking at me, and I'm like, I didn't know that about Ripley, or I didn't know about our area, and when I'm in my office, I'm going through records, and we were talking about people contact us for information. Well, maybe I haven't found anything for like 6 months, and all of a sudden I'm researching somebody else's question, and I discover a piece of that other person. So we're always connecting, aren't we?
Yes, yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, with me, I think that history, we always need to look at as holistically as we can, you know, because nothing really happens in a bubble. Everything has a reason for happening when it happens, and it's usually related to other things that were happening at the time. And so, so I think it's always kind of important to try to, whatever you're looking at, look at what else was happening too, because it helps understand it.
And I think you would agree with this. People that are listening and watching right now, if you have stories of your family or photos or anything that is historical in nature, don't throw it away. Right. Bring it to your town historian and let us take a look at it. And I mean, people are bringing me stuff now, and it's fun. I mean, just the timetable for trains, or what they were moving from Buffalo to Erie by train, eggs and sugar and stuff. But I mean, it gives it's the color of the fabric of our history. But people will bring me scorebooks from the 1920s from baseball teams, and just wild, crazy, fun things. And these are in their attics, or they'll find them, you know, stuck in a wall, and they'll say, "Are you interested in this?" I go, "Well, yeah, I'm interested in this." And, you know, I know space sometimes can be limited. Fortunately, I've got pretty good space, you know, to store stuff. But still and all, just don't throw the stuff away.
Right, and I you know, historians are really not supposed to be collectors. That's not really, you know, there's other organizations that do it better. And so we always encourage historians, if somebody presents you with something, help them find the best repository for it.
Exactly.
So take it to the local historical society, wherever somebody's charged with preserving artifacts and archives. And you know, that ties into like what you said earlier. A historian's records are the property of the town because they're the records that are collected as a town official. And so everything that a historian can do to make them, you know, organized, indexed, accessible is important, because you're not going to have that job forever. And the next person, you know, should be able to access those easily.
A question came through my earpiece, and I think I got the question. Are there archives at the county level?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're the largest historical records repository in the county, at the county, you know, the county seat, because we have all of the history of county government. So, yeah, we have a central archives where everything is stored, and it's environmentally controlled and secure, and We're very dedicated to protecting those records,
Right.
and making them accessible.
And you know, Meg, a good point. I know people bring me stuff, but it's little stuff. I mean, if they were to bring me something large, there's no way I could house it. But like you said, you could move it on to the Chautauqua County Historical Society at the McClurg Mansion or the Fenton or wherever, right?
Right. There's 23 local historical societies in Chautauqua County. Many of our towns have one. And so, I always encourage the historians to work with their town historical society, and if it can preserve the items better than the historian can, then they should work with them to do that. And some local historical societies aren't staffed and maybe don't have heat in the winter, so maybe that's not the great place to send an artifact.
Right.
But there's the County Historical Society and the Fenton both are in charge of well-run facilities.
I've encouraged people to take good photos and digitize it, and at least we have a virtual record of whatever it is. So, if it's some massive thing,
Right.
Nameplates and dates and things.
I read somewhere that the last half of the 20th century will be the worst documented segment of our history, because in the old days you wrote letters and you sent postcards and you maintained ledgers.
Who has
and,
texts?
And now, right now things are done, by email or text, and it's not going to be the same sort of record per se.
We've been covering things in general, and you have a special project we're going to get to in a minute, but I want to frame the discussion. In my inventorying of my offices, and that's what I've been doing for the last year, because everything was moved from the community building to the school building, and everything was like, disarray. So now I got a handle on what I have. But I came across a stack of postcards that Darwin Christie of Ripley had sent out to various family members in the 50s to figure out who had been in what war and what their position was and so on. And I had these postcards, and I said, what should I do with these things? I mean, I started looking up on the roll of honor that we have, and there were names that were missing. Well, it turns out I gave them to Bob McIntosh, who was in charge of the project, and in those postcards he found 100 service people, men and women, who nobody knew about.
Wow.
And then had we just thrown those cards away. So, and then in my other research that I've been doing with Dave Brown, I mentioned earlier with the Civil War, I've discovered like a half dozen or more Civil War soldiers that aren't in my records, that I inherited. So I'm rebuilding that list. And so here's the segue. There's so many people from Chautauqua County that served honorably in various wars. They came home and they were forgotten.
Right.
So take it away. So what was your project?
Well, as records manager, we have collected records from various old storage areas within the courthouse, and back when we did the big renovation with the courts, all of the records that had been stored up in the dome of the courthouse, which was not a great place to store records, but it was out of necessity. We had to get those out of there, and so there were some records that were in big wooden crates.
Are you talking about that dome?
That dome, yes.
Right there.
So
All right.
unfortunately, due to a lack of space, they started. It was like just a big attic. So there were just boxes and boxes of records. We digitized a lot of them. One group of records that was really, it would have normally only had a 6-year retention because they were just very generic invoices, so they would just be like a fiscal record, a 6-year retention. But within this huge collection of fiscal records were receipts from the town supervisors from the 1930s to get reimbursed by the county for indigent soldiers' burials. So we couldn't just throw those away. So as we were going through these very non-essential receipts, we found receipts for indigent burials.
Okay, let's define indigent, because I actually looked it up, and I was pretty close to what it meant, but maybe folks don't know what that means.
Yeah, indigent is just anybody who's poor, can't support themselves, can't pay for themselves. So, the poor farm was for indigents from each town, so anyone who was without the means to care for themselves. So an indigent burial would be one for which the family couldn't pay to have someone buried.
Now, it's my understanding that there are soldiers that are buried in cemeteries that have no stones. It's just, they're there, but there's no marker.
Right.
So this must have been like at a different time before this, the 30s?
Well, yeah, there were earlier efforts to help bury soldiers. So I think in the 1890s a law was passed that no honorably discharged soldier should be buried in a poor farm cemetery. And so we actually had soldiers moved from our poor farm cemetery to the Mayville Cemetery in 1890.
Oh, Mayville Cemetery. Oh.
Right. So there's always been, or there have been periodically been times when there were funds available to aid with soldiers' burials. So in the 1930s, there was a New York State law that soldiers and their widows would be paid for with public funds. So an honorably discharged soldier.
Okay.
And so it was for deaths of, current soldiers or military, but it was also for any soldier who had been buried for longer than 25 years in an unmarked grave. So we actually, through these receipts that we found that a soldier from the War of 1812 was provided with the headstone.
Really?
Yeah, so that was kind of nice. There was only one in that group, but so he was in the town of Hanover. So his grave was marked through this program.
What kind of a marker? I mean, is it a regular stone or just a little something?
Yeah, it's a standard granite marker. And so for the soldiers who were dying during this program, the funds would pay for the casket, the burial, and the stone.
Wow.
So for some of them, there was it might have seemed like a lot of money then. It was like $125, which is nothing, nowadays.
No.
But the average cost for the stones was like $45 to $75. And so there were a lot of Civil War soldiers who were provided with stones under this program.
And now they are in the Mayville Cemetery?
They're any cemetery in the county.
Oh, so all right. So
Right. So the program that was before we had a county legislature, so the town supervisors were the county government body. And so the town supervisors would submit these receipts to the county to get reimbursed for any soldier's burial within their town. So there were several hundred, and so we were trying to use the receipts, which didn't have a great deal of information on them, just the soldier's name. If anybody knew their service history, that was provided, and then the cost of the stone or the burial or whatever it was. So I have a volunteer who comes in one day a week to help with whatever genealogy requests or historical research we're working on. And we tried to find as much information about the people named in the receipts to see if we could find where they did get buried. And there's a website called Find a Grave.
Yes.
That is free and has millions of graves from around the world on it. So we were just checking to see if they were on Find a Grave. So we now have a database that's on my website of all of the names of the individuals and anything that we could find about them to help.
Now you have a sample of a receipt? Is that?
This was the blank form that was
So
used.
what kind of information were they using then?
Well, it just says the super of this town is asking to get reimbursed for the burial expenses of so-and-so, an indigent honorably discharged of the late war, so that would have been referring to World War I, who was in this company in this regiment. And then there's a line for the headstone and then the addition of any other expenses. And then the town supervisor just had to certify that to the best of his knowledge, this was an accurate cost. So, you think back in the 30s, they didn't have access to the research tools that we have now. So what we found, of course, which was frustrating, but that's what you do with historical research, is there's a lot of inaccuracies with these.
Misspellings and
so we found some things, that just weren't weren't accurate. And with the spreadsheet that we developed, we tried to correct those things. Some towns paid for burials that weren't in their town. Some of the stones are wrong. And every once in a while, I get a phone call in my office from somebody who's wandered through a cemetery in Portland and found a gravestone for a woman, and it says that she was a sergeant in the 112th Regiment during the Civil War.
I've heard about this, but what's that all about?
And her stone was paid for through this program. And I think what happened is her husband's stone was so badly deteriorated that you couldn't read it. And I think they put his service information on her stone.
Oh my gosh.
But I don't suppose they wanted to pay for a whole lot of language. So it has her name, Martha Crane, and then it says Sergeant Company I 112th, which was actually what her husband's stone had said before it deteriorated so badly.
Blended them together.
But
Oh my gosh.
you don't know that by looking at her stone. You think she was a sergeant in the Civil War, which of course women were not, So things like that, we've tried to clarify through our research.
Okay, let's hold that thought. We have a call. All right. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Oh,
Good morning, Michelle. I have a question
It's Linda
for
Spalding.
Michelle.
you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Okay, what's your question?
Michelle, could you tell me a little bit more about the Prendergast Cemetery?
Well, what do you want to know? I know where it is. I believe it's maintained now to some degree, and it's been. There's a historical marker along the road to let folks know where it's located.
Well, how about tell me, where is it? I don't know anything about this.
It's on the Panama Stedman Road,
Okay.
and it's way in the back. You have to go through a private driveway, I think. Don't you? I've been in it a couple of times.
Yeah, it's it is. There's a private road that goes up to it, and I think originally it was for the Prendergast family, and it had a fence around it. But then for a number of years, the fence had fallen down and it was abandoned. But gosh, probably I don't know, before my time, probably 30 years ago, some folks went in and cleaned it up, and I think they got permission from the property owners around it to allow people to walk to it.
Is it very large, Linda?
No, it's small. Now, is it just for the Prendergast family, or is it kind of a military thing? I was wondering, I thought I saw a lot of military markers there.
Yeah, it wasn't. I don't believe it was just for the Prendergast family. There's a transcript of the stones that were legible that I have in my office. It wasn't military, so it may have just been used by local families at a time. It might have some Civil War veterans in it, but I think it was discontinued shortly thereafter.
Before the show, Linda, Michelle and I were talking about the Prendergasts, and they were a huge family, and there's Prendergast in the Ripley cemeteries, and there's a gentleman that was the older brother of James Prendergast that lived in Ripley right down at the bottom of my road. So, I mean, they were everywhere, I guess.
Yeah, Matthew Prendergast was in the Mayville area, one of those many siblings.
Does anybody know where they're from originally, before they immigrated here?
Yeah, Eastern New York State. I mean, there's a great story about how the family got here. They traveled down south and then didn't like it and came back. It's written about in a lot of our early histories. So, if you have access to any of the county's early histories, the story of the Prendergasts and how they arrived here is very interesting. They came with a couple slaves, and then freed them, when the state required them to do so. So it's a very interesting story.
Yeah.
I found
history is interesting.
I found in the Ripley area that in the very early years it was predominantly Irish. They were coming in from Vermont and down through the St. Lawrence and all the way through there, and then ended up in Ripley. But
Right. Yeah.
A lot of Irish.
Right. I think our the county kind of developed because of the Great Lakes. Then the passage from eastern New York and New England down here to the from the Great Lakes. So, yeah.
Yep.
Is it true that there's a sizable population in this area from France, a French population?
My wife's family's from France, so
Yeah. I don't know that I would ever have heard of it being sizable. I don't know if that was one of the big ethnic groups that ever came here.
there were some. There was a lot of French down in Brookville area near Breezewood in Pennsylvania. There was a whole community of French. They were coal miners and lumberjacks and that, and they migrated this way. But as you say, I don't know a lot. Why'd you ask that question, Lynn? That's an interesting question.
Well, I think I've heard that, and my family originally came from France.
What part?
Oh, the Black Forest area.
Okay, right on the German border.
Yeah,
there.
right. And they were here at the time of the American Revolution, and then they I guess they first went to Albany, but then they went to Buffalo. And it's very hard to trace genealogically because very often people couldn't pronounce the French names, so they Anglo-Saxonized them, and it's hard to get the records.
What was the French name?
Bellier.
Can you spell that?
I'm not sure. It's Bellier or Bellieu, and they changed it to Ballard, which is English. But that's not what it was originally. And I have records of that, but it's difficult to trace everything.
Imagine that. they did a lot of that sort of thing.
Yeah, a lot of our early records, you have to really take the spelling with a grain of salt, and you have to
Absolutely.
be very imaginative when you're trying to research for somebody because they didn't often get it right.
Or when they came to Ellis Island, they didn't spell it correctly or added an S or whatever, yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
And in Ireland, too, it's hard to get the records because during the wars, there were very carefully kept records by the Celtics, but then during the wars, they were destroyed.
Well, I'm also part Belgian. I'm a real mix. And in Belgium, they don't release any records for 100 years.
Oh.
So I had to wait a long time to find out, and all of a sudden then I got all this information about my family.
Nice.
So crazy rules, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's fascinating. Thank you for getting onto that and talking about it.
okay.
Oh, thanks.
Well, thanks for calling, Lynn.
Okay. Have a great weekend,
All right.
everybody.
You
All right,
too.
take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Speaking of that, one of the soldiers that we were researching was had the last name of Brown, and yeah, we could not find any information on him, even though the receipt was for this gentleman named Leonard Brown, and we searched everywhere, and we couldn't find anything that would show where he lived in the county, where he was buried, who, so we were using all the possible resources that we could, and in one of the veteran service files, we found a notation somebody had written that he was soon going to be moving, and they gave a street address in Dunkirk. So we went to the city directories.
There you go.
And the family in that house was Gernadowitz. So we were like, what? But the first name of the gentleman was Leonard.
He changed it.
And so we looked in the front of the book because you can search by street address or by name.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And the name was actually Bernadowitz, but they had a typo in the city directory and made it a G.
Oh my gosh.
But every other record we found for him, and he's very well documented, he's buried in Dunkirk, his name is Bernadowitz. But the only record we found was the service record, so he enlisted as Brown.
Fascinating.
Maybe for that very reason, that
Yeah.
his other name was just too hard to deal with.
Not too many letters and vowels.
Yeah.
Funny.
So we've kind of tied him to, and he's buried with his original name.
Oh,
So,
cool.
yeah.
All right, so getting back to our Indigent folks. So it was in the 1930s, the program. How long did it last?
The receipts that we found, and it may just be that we only found a certain portion that were in this collection, but they run from like 1930 to 35.
Oh, so that's kind of a short window, right?
Right, right. And, like I said, they may not have been retained after that period. They might have been disposed of, with the other fiscal receipts.
Right.
But we're just happy we found what we did because we actually were able to, document some folks' quite well through that.
So before the show, we got your website loaded up. So shall we have a look, see what,
Sure.
and you can talk a little bit about it in case people are interested. So I'll let you talk. What are we looking at?
Yeah, that's the front page for the county historian's website, and you can see on the left there are tabs for various projects that we are continuing to add to, and then under the cemetery tab, if you were to click on that, you would find some of the cemetery records that we've indexed.
Okay.
And then along with that is the link to the indigent burial spreadsheet,
Okay, so
which
they
is
clicked on
here.
cemeteries, I guess.
Right, and so this is just a PDF of all of the names that we researched, and so we included their service history if it was there, where they're buried. If they're on Find a Grave, we put their Find a Grave number, because often there's a lot more information there that
Yeah.
somebody can find. So it's an alphabetical list of everybody.
And you said you have a couple hundred?
Yeah, there were several hundred. I think maybe like 350
No kidding. Wow.
names. So it really was nice because it allowed us to mark a lot of Civil War veterans, and also in the 1930s we had quite a few World War I veterans who were dying. So they died young. It's really tragic. That war was really a difficult war. A lot of the soldiers had lingering issues that they died quite young.
Okay, so let's say we will find our Mr. Brown, and in there he was indigent. How do you say it?
Indigent.
Indigent. I got too many goods in there. Indigent and poor, and it'll tell you where. He's my peanut gallery here. Where they're buried.
Right. Where
Okay.
which cemetery, and then I think we included the amount of money that was on the receipt, just to give somebody a sense of what was paid for the stone. So for each of these receipts, there should be a stone somewhere in a cemetery.
Okay.
It's not always the case, and we don't know why. So for some of these folks, we never did find where they're buried. And it could just be that the cemetery hasn't been read, because primarily these records are compiled by people walking through the cemetery and writing down information from the from the stones. And so these are people that we couldn't find a cemetery reading, or we couldn't find them on Find a Grave. So that maybe there is a stone, but without going out to the cemeteries and walking them, we don't know for sure.
And again, for people that want to go back to their roots, they want to have a connection to family or whatever, this is a good project.
Yeah.
Michelle, we have about 1 minute and 10 seconds left. So what would you like to tell folks about your office or any project you're working on in the future? Anything?
Well, just if you have any questions about any part of the county's history, we're happy to try to help. We try to refer people to the best source of information, and it's not always us. We're certainly not the experts on everything. Hopefully this year we will continue to have more access, and perhaps we'll be able to get out and do some more public speaking. I'm always available to speak to groups if they're interested. And we're check my website. We're always trying to add more information to the website so that it's available for folks.
So the easiest way to get to you would be just to Google Chautauqua County Government.
Right.
And
right.
then
County
historian's
historian,
under there.
right.
You just drill right down.
Right.
Okay. And any future projects you're working on?
Well, there's a couple in the works that we'll see how they roll out.
Okay. We'll keep us posted. How's that sound? Okay. Well, folks, we're just about out of time. Michelle, thanks for joining us as always. And I could sit here and talk to you all day about this stuff. But I hope you all enjoyed that. And if you're looking for family research or you just have a question about some ancestors, talk to your local town historian or contact the county. So you've been watching Chautauqua Sunrise. Michelle Henry's been my guest. She's the county records manager and county historian. And remember, you always can look back on YouTube and find this show if you want to reference any of the information that we covered today. Go Bills! Tonight, 8:15. Woo-hoo! You quiet over there. Your team is out. And we'll do this all again next Saturday morning. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week, and see you then. Bye-bye now.